All right, everybody, let's do a show. Welcome to Inside Coverage, the how and the why, any and everything you need to know around the National Football League. We're here Monday through Thursday. My name is Andrew Siciliano. It's week 8. We are thrilled that you are here. Every Thursday, we do the big preview show. Maybe not every game because we don't want it a 3-hour pod, but the games that are most important to us. How about that? Plus, this week, on this week's Week 8 preview show, I said week 3 times in 4 seconds, we're going to sprinkle in a little news from the fall meeting, because back from the fall meeting, ladies and gentlemen, let's pull back the curtain and unveil my partners for this show. Not only Ben Fawkes, our betting analyst, but back from the league meeting. It was a very short trip across Midtown. Jori Epstein, how the heck are you?
I am doing well. Happy to see you guys. How are you doing, Andrew and Ben?
I am wonderful. Thank you for your camera work and all your lobby reporting. It is hard work hanging out in the lobby trying to find an owner to say something silly. But you guys were great collectively as an NFL media group getting not that the NFL media group, that's actually NFL Network. I mean, a group of collected members of the NFL media getting people like Woody Johnson to say something silly. And as Ben Fawkes is here, our betting analyst as well, like we sit here trying to figure out who the heck Woody is going to start a quarterback this week. Among life's conundrums, Ben, heading into week 8.
That is one of them. Listen, it's all important for bettors. I think the Jets are, they all tickets cash the same, as we say. So you want to bet on them, you want to bet against them. And shockingly, there is always a lot of sharp money on the Jets. They're one of the teams the Sharps have backed repeatedly this season. It's happened the last couple years, not always taking those to the window. But for whatever reason, people have liked the Jets. Hopefully they didn't see too much that London game, although I will say they did cover against the Broncos in that game. So again, doesn't have to be pretty as long as you cash a ticket.
Yeah, and I always put my hands up and say for recreational purposes only. And when you mention Sharps and I think of the Jets, I think of friends who are Jets fans who I have to remind on Sundays to stay away from sharp objects, obviously, as the Jets are the last remaining winless team in the National Football League. All right, so we don't do every game. We do the games that are most important to us. All right, the games that we have our WhatsApp, and we were bouncing around last night to figure out the most important games to us. We're going to go right to Sunday night here, which is the Packers at 4-1 and the Steelers at 4-2 with Tirico and Collinsworth and Melissa Stark. Let's before we do that, tell you it's a 7 games early and a 3-game late window, and 6 teams have byes. The Cardinals, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Lions, the Rams, and the Seahawks. 4 more teams have byes next week, so this one's kind of weird. This is the Aaron Rodgers revenge game, although he says it's not a revenge game. He doesn't like that phrase, and this game doesn't mean that much more to him other than the fact that he knows a whole bunch of people over there from his 18 years. I'm going to poll the audience before we dive into the numbers. Jori, do you believe that this isn't a revenge game for him and he's just shrugging his shoulders? Do you buy that?
No.
I don't either. Ben, do you buy that?
I think outside of Michael Jordan and a few others, Aaron Rodgers can make just about anything into a slight. So he's the king of that. It feels pretty hard to believe and fairly disingenuous that this is not a revenge game for him. I don't think everything is hunky-dory with everyone in that organization, even that if that's kind of the picture he was painting in that press conference.
Yeah, we're all on the same page here.
I think it's also fair to say that 2 things can be true, which is that he wants revenge against, say, general manager Brian Gutekunst, who made that decision to draft Jordan Love, who then still cut Aaron Rodgers after he won 2 MVPs with Jordan Love in the building. And also that Aaron will be very excited to see the list of people he mentioned, including Jordan Love. I do not believe he's trying to get revenge against Jordan Love, to be clear. I think when he tells us Jordan Love's a good kid, which Jordan Love is great. He's so awesome for us to work with. I think that he thinks highly of Jordan Love. Jordan was in that position. Aaron had been in it previously with Brett Favre. He understands that. And I think that there are the equipment guys and the strength guys and the PT guys, and who's getting Aaron his helmet. I mean, we know he cares about what helmet. He's talked about that pretty extensively in recent years. So I do think there are a lot of people that he's going to be excited to see. In terms of, is it a revenge game? Does it mean more than the others? There's kind of this landscape against which we should view it, which is I was at the Steelers game against the Jets week 1. I'll be there in Pittsburgh this week for the Packers trip to the Steelers. After that week 1 visit, so again, Aaron Rodgers going back to the team he just played for, who also said they do not want him back, he definitely said it felt good to beat anyone associated with the Jets, but he also said from like a revenge standpoint and all the memories, it would be different than if it was the Packers, whom he had played for 18 years. So he already told us then the Packers mean more than the Jets in terms of the history he has with them. On the flip side of that, he said this week, which I think is fair, that from an emotional standpoint, it feels different to play at Lambeau Field than for the Packers, who have a lot of players he didn't play with anymore, to come to Pittsburgh. So I think there's gradations of all of this.
Yeah, I'm with you. Those are great points, Jori. I also remember, if you go back to when he did play and beat the Jets week 1, as you were referring to, the whole week was like, yeah, this game doesn't mean much to me. And then afterwards, it's like, oh yeah, yep, this game meant a lot, and it was deny, and then like at the very end because they won. Not growling. I know you were walking off the field with him, but he called. It seemed on the podium afterwards that he kind of held those emotions in during the week. Is that fair to say? And then afterwards kind of conceded that, yes, there was something there.
I think it's a similar idea to me, which is that there are people against whom he wanted revenge with the Jets, and then people with whom he was and is still very close with. But I think that he let his guard down a little bit when he put the hand to the ear and cupped it on his way off after beating them.
And you were right there
actually,
for that.
I think that was actually more of a moment than it feels good to beat anyone associated with the Jets, because that was actually in response to someone specifically asking, did it feel good to beat Aaron Glenn, their head coach, after he hadn't wanted Rodgers? And so Rodgers was actually trying to say, it's not just Aaron, it's everyone, but really like it was more Aaron. So to me, the hand cupping was much more of the moment of like, yeah, I'll get my little moment and show you guys I still got it, and I'm not washed like you thought I was when you let me go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly. And last Thursday, he didn't look washed. He threw the 3 touchdowns to 3 different tight ends. He got tackled by his own left tackle. I mean, there's a lot going on there. To me, this game comes down, honestly, to can Pittsburgh stop Jordan Love? And Aaron, this is kind of different. Aaron is kind of the deodorant here for what is, unless they're playing the Browns, a Pittsburgh defense that is not good. They're giving up 375 yards a game. They're the number 28 total defense in the NFL. They're allowing 23 points a game, which is kind of middle of the pack. And only the Cowboys have a worse pass defense than the Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr., he just held somebody again, Pittsburgh Steelers. They have the number 31 pass D in the NFL. And I say only the Cowboys are worse. It's a 1.5 yard difference. That's it. So they're basically the same. The Steelers are basically tied with the Cowboys for the worst pass defense in the NFL. So listen, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to do enough against Micah Parsons or whomever Jeff Hafley throws at him to put points on the board like he did against Cincinnati. Now, granted, Cincinnati's defense is awful as well. And I do think Rodgers is going to do enough to become the 5th quarterback in NFL history to beat 32 different teams. He's going to do it like Favre and Brady and Manning and Breeze. But honestly, Ben, this game to me comes down to, can Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin dial up a defense to stop Jordan Love? Because that's their Achilles heel.
Yeah, diving into the numbers, I was intrigued that by DVOA, the Green Bay offense is 8th. The Steelers actually 9th. So fairly equivalent there, which I wouldn't have thought. But the Packers 7th on defense and the Steelers 20th, right? Green Bay 6th overall, the Steelers 10th. Steelers obviously coming off a little bit of a mini bye, playing last Thursday against the Bengals. And I think, to your point, not only did they lose that game, the concerning part, I think, is how they lost it, and just making Joe Flacco look like a prime Aaron Rodgers against that defense. That's not something that should happen. The Packers, they're a 3-point favorite in this game in Pittsburgh. Generally, Mike Tomlin as a home underdog has done well in 32 games. He's 19-13 straight up, 22-7-3 against the spread as a home underdog. And the Packers are a little weird team because they have won all of these games, but they've actually lost 4 straight games against the spread, and they're 0-3 against the spread on the road this season. Not an impressive showing against the Cardinals. They did pull the game out, including that kind of controversial 4th and 2, going for that instead of kicking the tying field goal. But they've kind of left you wanting more. They were the potential Super Bowl favorites after that Micah Parsons deal. They dominated the Lions. And they've grinded out these wins, but they haven't been meeting the market expectations. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this game and whether they kind of can live up to those market expectations as well. And this is also a really important game for the Steelers. I know we're going to talk about the Ravens coming up, but the odds makers don't think that division is decided. And especially with that loss to the Bengals in a game we thought the Steelers, their 5.5 point favorites, would win. Those division odds are very, very close. Right now, the Steelers are plus 125 at BetMGM. The Ravens are plus 140. So they are right there despite the difference in those records. So really important game for both teams. Arguably, you could say the Steelers need a little more with their difficult schedule coming up as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Jori. You're going to be there again. If the Bengals beat the Jets, let's just assume they're going to beat the Jets, although the Jets have a pass D here, and I don't know. So let's assume the Bengals beat the Jets. They get to 3 wins. They have, and they're going to play again, they have the win, as Ben pointed out, in hand over the Steelers, and the Steelers fall to 4-3, so it's 3-4 and 4-3.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's still room in this division, but I don't know. I think that the Steelers have the ability to figure this out. I think they have the talent. I think, to me, the defensive key will be Jalen Ramsey. And I think that even though there are pieces that are not settled, despite Jalen Ramsey being one of the newer additions to that defense, I mean, if you hear Mike Tomlin talk about him and Aaron Rodgers talk about him and all of his teammates talk about him, what he's been able to do on the field, what he's played through to some degree from a health standpoint, and just the versatility of his position, and whether it's the pass breakup at the end of the game in one week, and then you've got his interception another week. I mean, I think there's just a lot he can do. And I do think that that will be something that the Green Bay Packers, they're a talented team, but they have been struggling in recent weeks. And I would also say on the other side of the ball, the Green Bay Packers defense has really struggled a lot more against the deep ball in the last 3 games that they played versus the first 3. I think they are tied with 5 touchdowns allowed against downfield throws in that stretch, and no one has allowed more. And so I think when you look at it, if Aaron Rodgers can open it up a little bit, I mean, he actually has been throwing much closer to the sticks. Almost all of his yards are coming after the catch. It's the highest percentage in the league. That I think that if you say, Aaron, yes, you can throw some of those quick passes, and maybe you do want to throw quickly because you want to neutralize Micah Parsons, but why don't we just also mix in some of those deep throws to DK, to a big target like Darnell Washington, whoever it is, because the Packers have not been defending downfield very well.
No, they haven't. Those are all great points here. And Jori, good luck traveling. The Pittsburgh airport is a mess right now, construction. The new hall is supposed to open in a couple of weeks. It's not there yet. There's whatever. It's a mess. Have fun.
True inside coverage right there.
That is true inside coverage there. The Franco Harris thing is no longer there next to the escalators. There's scaffolding all over the place. It's supposed to be great when it does open, when they do the full remodel. But yes, Ben, I could review any airport in America. Let's go. Including airports in both Baltimore and Chicago, either of the ones in Chicago. I was just in the one in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago. The way that you got to get to the United Gates, the security is all the way down there. They need to consolidate it. Anyway, I digress. Bears, Ravens. Bears are 4-2. The Ravens are 1-5. We dipped into this one a little bit yesterday with me and Charles Robinson. This, to me, is one of the most fascinating games of, I don't want to say the season, but actually, you know what? I will say the season. It is a 1:00 game on CBS with Ian Eagle, J.J. Watt, and the very tall Evan Washburn down to the sideline. As of today, we're recording this on Thursday, Lamar Jackson back-to-back limited in practice designations. The thought is he's going to play, but no one has said that. And John Harbaugh has been very cagey. Wouldn't even on Wednesday, when asked if it isn't Lamar, is it definitely going to be Cooper Rush? Wouldn't even answer that. There's a thought it might be Tyler Huntley, who when last we saw the Ravens before the bye, came off the bench when Cooper Rush was ineffective. DeAndre Swift limited as well, which is key here to the Bears, who during their 4-game winning streak, and they're scoring 21 points at all these games, have really found that run game. And Swift has 100 yards in each of the last 2 weeks. Ben, I'm going to reverse course here and start with you rather than Jori, because this is the one, and I'll talk the spread here. Confounding numbers to me, and we talked about it yesterday. It's 6.5. The Bears have won 4 in a row. The Bears are on a heater. The Ravens are coming off a bye, and I know John Harbaugh is 14-3 in his career in Baltimore, coming off a bye. But Lamar's status is up in the air, and the Ravens are giving up 30 points a game. What am I missing here?
Well, I don't think you're necessarily missing anything. I think some things are priced in a bit. So just looking through, for example, the schedule, right? The Ravens, they played October 5th at home against the Texans. Then they played at home against the Rams. Then they had a bye, and now they're at home against Chicago. So since October 5th, they have been home the entire time. So they haven't had to leave at all. That obviously makes a little difference with travel. They are coming off a bye week. It is interesting, right? Because they are 1-5 against the spread. They are the worst team in the NFL against the spread, which you would have won a lot of money before the season through week 7, saying the Ravens were going to be the worst team under John Harbaugh, with Lamar playing several games against the spread. But also, you have to factor in a couple things besides that rest. One is that defense has been really bad, but mostly without its full component of pieces. And I take that Bills game a little bit in week 1 with a grain of salt, just because I think Josh Allen was unstoppable, and any defense outside of the 85 Bears and maybe the Ravens in the early 2000s was going to slow them down that game. So that one aside, they're getting a lot. Chidobe Awuzie,
I've heard it both
full
ways.
Participant. That works. Kyle Hamilton, full participant, right? Marlon Humphrey, full participant. Patrick Ricard, full participant. Roquan Smith on the offensive line. Ronnie Staley. So they're getting the components of a team which was either the number 1 power rated team or in the top 3 to 5 of all odds makers I spoke with before the season. And yes, they have for sure underperformed expectations on the field and in the betting market so far. But there is still that preseason, what you thought of them component, and then what we've seen so far. And I think they just haven't had enough games with their full team for the market to fully say, hey, this team is just much worse than we thought. This is a team that has a preseason win total of 11.5. So if they lose any more games, they will go under that win total. This is a team that's supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. Lamar Jackson was the MVP favorite entering the season. So all of those things are, I think, why this spread is a little higher than you'd think. And also, it really is, we talked about division odds, but this is a game that they really can't afford to drop. But if they were going to drop a game, it is also against the Bears, and it's out of conference. So it's a little less important in that sense. Bears have won 4 in a row against the spread and straight up. And a good nugget from Bet Labs. Since 2003, teams that have won 20% or fewer of their games, so the Ravens would be an example at 1-5 and are at least a 3-point favorite, which the Ravens here are 6.5, are 30-14-2, 68% against the spread since 2003. So generally, they're favored for a reason, and generally, they do cover that spread. Interesting note, too, the Bears are the only team in the NFL that has gone over their team total. So how many points the Bears are expected to score each game in all 6 games. So, but to your point, really interesting game for a lot of reasons. Not completely shocked that the line is 6.5. And also, we saw this with that Texans game where the line completely moved before Lamar Jackson was ruled out. I think it moved 12 points, and the Texans ended up as a 2.5 point favorite. This has still held at about Ravens -6, Ravens -6.5. And odds makers I spoke to believe Lamar Jackson is going to play. So while it hasn't been officially, put out there that he is, and he is limited in practice, the expectation based off of the line and the lack of market movement so far is that Lamar will be playing on Sunday.
When I look at what's the key to this game, it's actually not the Ravens' defense. It's actually the other side of the ball, and it's not specifically the offense and whether Lamar can play, but what is the turnover differential going to look like? I think that when you say the Ravens have gone 1-5, it's accurate and it's fair, and you play who you play, and it'll impact the playoff standings, but also they played the Bills and the Lions and the Chiefs and the Rams. And so those teams, I expect all of those teams to be in the playoffs and get in pretty comfortably. So I think when you look at their losses, yes, some of the ways they lost might be bad, but the actual fact that they lost, I'm less concerned about that than I'm concerned of how they are going to respond from the losses and what it's going on in the locker room and John Harbaugh in the locker room and the relationship between all that. I think that those dynamics, particularly for a coach who's been in the locker room or with the team, I should say, for a while, can start to impact it. My problem is a key in that has been the turnovers. I mean, the Ravens, they turned over the ball 3 times last week, 3 the week before, 2, 1. They've only had 1 turnover-free game. And I looked at the Bears because you would say, well, are the Bears actually any good at takeaways? Yeah, they lead the league in takeaways. They lead the league in net differential on turnovers, and the Ravens are second to worst on that. And so to me, the question is, are the Bears defense going to force the Ravens, Lamar Jackson or not, into these mistakes? And I get that Derrick Henry should be able to run the ball more easily with Lamar Jackson in there and another threat behind the legs, but if you fumble, it doesn't necessarily matter because that's probably going to decide the game, especially if it happens repeatedly, as it has recently for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, that note about the turnovers, they come in bunches, as coaches like to say. The Bears have 3 or more takeaways in each of their last 4 games. So the winning streak here, weeks 3 through 7, and that's tied for the longest streak of any team in 6 years in the NFL. The Steelers had a streak like that for 5 straight weeks back in 2019. So Dennis Allen has found something with his team, and they're turning the ball over a lot. Again, a lot of it has to do with Lamar and the Ravens. To everyone's point here, they know that if they go to 1-6, it's over. So like their season is on the line right here. But hey, I like the way the Bears are playing. That's just me. Coming up on Inside Coverage, if that weren't the game of the week, maybe it's just me. Cowboys and Broncos could be the game of the week. Cowboys, very good offensively, very bad defensively. That one is in the spotlight. Coming up next year on Inside Coverage. Inside Coverage here on Yahoo. Andrew Siciliano, Jori Epstein, our betting analyst expert. Well, I've heard it both ways. Ben Fawkes, as we continue to go through our Week 8 games. As mentioned earlier, 6 teams are off. 4 more teams, by the way, have byes next week, so this is like the heart of the bye season. There are 7 games early and 3 games late. In the late window, the 4 p.m. Eastern time window, there's really one game that stands out. It's the Cowboys and the Broncos, 3-3-1 at 5-2. The other games are the Titans and the Colts are favored by more than 2 touchdowns, which is just mind-blowing against anyone, but that's the season they have had, and they deserve that, certainly. And then the other late game, Baker and the banged-up Bucs, say that 5 times fast, against Spencer Rattler and the Saints. So this is clearly the game that the overwhelming majority of America will see on CBS with Nance and Romo and Tracy Wolfson down to the sideline. We talked earlier about the Steelers' bad defense and the Cowboys' bad defense. I'm trying to put the Cowboys' bad defense into perspective here. Because remember, the Broncos have a great defense. At least they get after the passer better than any other defense in the NFL. So the Cowboys have the number 1 total offense. So 390 yards per game, almost 400 yards per game, which is absurd. Okay, but they have the number 32, the worst total defense. This is Super Bowl 60, so this is year 60 of the quote-unquote Super Bowl era. Only once in the Super Bowl era has a team finished the year with the number 1 offense and the worst defense ever. That was the 85 Chargers, who finished 8-8 and made the playoffs. Not surprisingly, the Cowboys are sitting here at 500, 3-3-1, basically. So they're basically 3.5-3 in the win-loss record. The Cowboys are what they are. I've said all week, I've said the last couple of weeks, they shouldn't punt. Brian Anger should have one job and one job only, especially at altitude for Brandon Aubrey, and that is holding for 80-yard field goals. That's it. The Broncos have won 4 straight after a 1-2 start, but both those losses have come on game-winning field goals as time expired. Week 2 against Indianapolis and Week 2 against the Chargers. Both of those games are on the road. Jori, there are a lot of ways to look at this game. You could look at it as merely the Javonte Williams revenge game, which I don't think anyone is other than Javonte Williams and his family. You could also look at it as, can Dak Prescott keep on lighting it up, and is that enough to win?
I think this will be a real test for the Cowboys offense because we've seen what they can do and we've seen how consistent they've been and that they've improved even more when they got back CeeDee Lamb, Kevontae Turpin, Tyler Booker, some offensive linemen to go with what Dak and George Pickens had been doing and what the run game was able to do most of the games, although not against the Carolina Panthers. And now this will be the best defense that the Cowboys has faced. And so you have to say, okay, what are they going to be able to do against Denver, particularly when, sure, the Broncos have struggled offensively in recent games, but most teams that struggle offensively would like to play a team like the Dallas Cowboys. So I think from a schematic standpoint, both offenses are going to be tested in different ways. And I think that you can also say, well, hey, Denver, how are you going to respond to what happened last week? Is this going to be something you ride, or is this going to be something that you actually have a little bit of exhaustion carrying over from what you had to do in the fourth quarter and you're not quite ready here? So I think there's a lot of storylines to look at here.
Yeah, this is a great game as well. The Broncos have been such a kind of weird team. Like, you look at the schedule and you say, all right, they're facing the Giants and they're facing the Jets. 2 easy wins, right? And somehow still, thankfully, I didn't get up and watch the entire London game, but they managed to beat the Jets 13-11 in a game. The Jets, I believe, had 82 yards of offense on 57 offensive plays, which is nearly impossible to have. And yet they barely eked that game out. Now, win's a win. They still did it. And obviously they got the victory improbably against the Giants last weekend. It's really been that fourth quarter. They also outscored, I think, the Eagles 18-0 in the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. They did lose that game against the Colts earlier in the season with the leverage calls. They've had a kind of a weird season where you could make the case they should have won a couple more games, and you can easily make the case they should have lost several of these games. They are a team, though, obviously much better defense. They are, let's say, 8th in DVOA on defense, 7th against the pass, 9th against the rush. So they've been great. Dallas offense on the other side, 4th overall, 6th in passing DVOA, 3rd in rushing DVOA. But Denver also has it's depended on the quarterback they've faced. They've given up a lot of passing yards to good quarterbacks. 316 to Daniel Jones, 300 to Justin Herbert, 280 to Hurts. And whereas when they've played not as good quarterbacks like Jake Browning, Justin Fields, Cam Ward, they've kind of dominated those. So I think the defense is still really good. It's that question of the Cowboys right now are clearly a flawed team. But is it better to have that really, really good offense and maybe you can outscore teams versus that defense that obviously it's so difficult to defend the NFL these days with penalties and everything else can slip up and you're going to stay in some of those games. The Cowboys right now, a 3.5-point underdog in Denver. Public is on the Cowboys. The Cowboys 3-0 ATS as underdogs this season. And also interesting that Bo Nix last season for the Broncos 8-0 against the spread as a favorite. This season 1-4. So they were outperforming probably lower expectations. This season underperforming probably higher expectations. But should be a really good game in Denver. And yes, I do hope they let Brandon Aubrey attempt a 70 to 75 yard field goal at the end of the first half.
Yeah, you mentioned Bo Nix. He became the first player in NFL history to have 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in the fourth quarter alone in that crazy comeback last week. There's a fun one. I'm interested because hey, the Broncos reportedly could use a wide receiver, right? They drafted Pat Bryant this year. They obviously they have Franklin, they have Cortland Sutton, they have Marvin Mims, but one of the teams out there that it's been said maybe as we get closer to the trade deadline, they go get themselves another weapon. Does Matt Eberflus, after playing more man, which is totally out of character last week, play more man this week? Does he go back to what he's always done, which is the bread and butter, which is the zone? I'm also interested, Jori, we spent so much time, and I know it was obviously a topic of conversation there, I'm sure, in the lobby at the fall meeting in New York with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Like, how does his team respond after getting beaten soundly for 3 quarters and then finally waking up for an historic run and a cinematic performance in the fourth quarter. And then there's the thing with Sean and Russell this week. I don't know that factors, but like what's the mood in the building? They won the game, but did they lose the game? And how Sean Payton gets his team ready this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that about Denver because I felt the opposite way about the Giants, which is that the Giants should feel better than they probably did when they lost that game, especially if you're Jackson Dart, because what that Giants offense was able to do against Denver for 3 quarters, I thought was really impressive and really beyond what I was expecting. But I do think we're going to learn something about the Denver culture and how they respond and to what degree they're buying into Sean Payton. And on the flip side, from a Cowboys perspective, I think we're going to learn something about what their trade deadline activity is going to look like. I talked to Cowboys Executive Vice President Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones, actually, but Stephen, for this particular quote, at the league meetings. And when I was asking him about it, he said, look, when you see the league right now, you only have 2 teams with 1 loss, and one of those teams has a tie in there. And so this is a league where everyone feels like they have a chance. Everyone feels like, well, I shouldn't get rid of my good player because I might still make the playoffs. I'm not quite out of it yet, which is really going to impact the trade deadline. So I think when we're watching the Cowboys-Broncos game this week, as well as some of the other games, we should realize that both in terms of whether teams are willing to part with players and whether teams are going to try and go get someone at the deadline, that this week, a lot of people at the league meetings were telling me they feel like it's going to be very informative in terms of who wants to be a buyer or seller at the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, Election Day is the trade deadline. So Tuesday, November 4. These games mean something. They truly do. Remember, the Browns were part of an effort to push the trade deadline back 1 week. They wanted 2 weeks. We're going to settle for 1 week. So it is Election Day. Let's go to the NFC East here, because you mentioned the Giants, Jori. The Giants are at 2-5. The Eagles at 5-2. This one's in Philadelphia. Remember, they played in primetime. They had the TNF game a couple of weeks ago. So they're playing twice in 3 weeks, which is something you don't. Well, sometimes you see it, especially in the back half of the season. This is first in the NFC East against last in the NFC East. So how do the Giants respond here after blowing that huge lead? They're up 18 with 6 minutes to go. You're not supposed to lose that game. This is, in terms of the broadcast, the Burkhardt, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi, Fawkes crew. The injury of note here is A.J. Brown, who is active on Instagram but inactive on the field. He is a DNP again today with a hammy, and truly no one knows if A.J. Brown is going to play after a great game last week. He had a $121 and a couple of touchdowns. He leads the team in 51 targets despite all the passive-aggressive griping on social media. Devontae Smith had a career game last week. Jalen threw for 300. They're not a running team anymore. They're a passing team. Remember after the game 2 weeks ago when Scadaboo's ripping his dry fit off and Jackson Dart is hooting and hollering, our friend Mike Garafolo said, hey, look around. You realize this doesn't happen like this. And Dart said, yeah, and everyone had a good time. What also doesn't happen is the Giants don't sweep the Eagles. So we looked it up. The Giants have not swept the Eagles since 2007. So like an Eli Super Bowl season. It has been 18 years since the Giants swept the Eagles. How about just win in Philadelphia? They haven't won in Philadelphia in 12 years. Last time they won in Philadelphia, Chip Kelly was the head coach. Since then, Chip Kelly has coached the 49ers. He's coached UCLA for what felt like an eternity. He called plays for Ohio State last year, led them to a national championship. And right now he's calling plays for the Raiders. That's been his journey. He was the coach the last time the Giants found a way, or rather the Giants found a way to win in Philadelphia. Listen, on paper here, the Eagles, in my eyes, even despite Jori, all their offensive issues, are the better team. We know they're the better team, even though they've been outgained in all 7 games. I do think the Giants keep this interesting, though. I can't wrap my brain around them sweeping them, though.
I definitely think that this is one of those fool me once, shame on you, fool me
Yeah.
twice, shame on me. I don't think that the Eagles are going to let the Giants get away with this twice. I think that the Eagles defense is going to find an answer for Jackson Dart the way it was making life pretty difficult and pretty confusing to diagnose for Carson Wentz last week. And I think that we will see the Eagles have this comeback game. What I'm curious about is what will that look like? Because as you mentioned, A.J. Brown's not practicing. There are certain guys in the league, and you could say A.J. Brown is or isn't one, but this is a thing that practice a lot less than they play. And I definitely covered guys like that when I was in Dallas. And sometimes it's sort of like, how are they feeling? What do they think is best? Also, A.J. Brown has a history of certain injuries. So if he's got a knee injury and he's got that history, is it just better to rest, even if it's not the most fun option? I do think that, to me, the question will actually not be whether the Eagles can win. I think they can, but I want to know, can the Eagles get their run defense back on track against this team? And I recognize that the Giants have a good defensive front, but if I want to feel good coming out of this game for the Eagles, I want to see that they can move the ball a little bit on the ground.
Yeah, this is going to be a game. Eagles a 7.5-point favorite. This is going to be what we call a teaser special. Teasers where you can move that 6 points down, move another game 6 points down. A lot of people are going to have the Eagles in a teaser or a money line parlay, meaning just betting the Eagles to win the game with someone else. I think Jackson Dart has played better, maybe than people even think. Frank isn't here, so I can use QBR. Because I know he doesn't like QBR at all.
Does Frank hate? He hates QBR. I didn't realize that.
I think it was
passer rating
Frank.
also, or QBR in particular.
He seemed to not like QBR as a stat. I don't know.
All QBR is ESPN deciding it wants a proprietary passer rating stat. It's different math, but it's just the same concept. But I don't know. Do you guys like QBR or passer rating? I've never heard anyone in a bar talk about passer rating or QBR. Like, hey, I don't know if our quarterback has a good enough QBR right now. Have you?
I think I actually have, but I don't know. I use passer rating. I don't use QBR, but I do think passer rating is notable. I mean, I think it's relevant going back to the turnovers we were talking about a few minutes ago and how much they can impact games. Passer rating highly factors in touchdown to interception ratio, and I think that matters.
All right, so I will not defend my former employer too much, but QBR incorporates a lot more things than passer rating, such as giving credit for yards after the catch versus just, if someone takes a 5-yard screen pass and goes 80 yards, the quarterback gets less credit with QBR than they might with passer rating. Same thing with rushing, quarterback rushing, etc. So it incorporates a lot more things than passer rating. Moving on. Jackson Dart is 14th in QBR. Josh Allen 13th. So he has played well, and Jalen Hurts is 8th. He's played well. I thought it seemed like he tweaked his ankle. I know he is on the injury report and was a full participant, but it seemed like he tweaked his ankle in that Broncos game. Maybe, I forget if it was the second or the third quarter, and was far less mobile after that. I think that led potentially to that interception, which eventually kind of turned that game as well. And obviously, a lot of what we've seen from him and how he's been able to get some of those first downs and kind of backyard football has been due to his mobility. So I think that's one big injury, certainly, to monitor over the course of the week and to see as the game starts kind of how he looks. And ultimately, the Eagles are 11th in DVOA. The Giants are 24th. They're pretty much the same. The Giants, I think they're 23rd on offense, 25th on defense. So the Eagles are a much better team. As a Vikings fan, from watching that game last week, I don't think they're particularly impressive. I think they're very impressive in making the plays generally that they need to win the games. And that's what they've done, which is why it was so odd on that Thursday night when they just weren't making any of those plays against the Giants. So this is definitely one I see the Eagles, I think, putting their imprint on, and with a little more tape and potentially a less mobile Jackson Dart. I think this one potentially gets away from the Giants, and the Eagles win going away.
It is Jackson Dart's first divisional road start, for whatever that is worth. And if you want to end the conversation, at least for this game, with a passer rating note, Jalen Hurts had a perfect passer rating a week ago.
Ben's not impressed.
I'm aware. No, I'm aware of his passer rating. I can throw it
I
up
know you're
50
aware.
yards to AJ Brown to come down with it too if I know it's going to be wide open. No, he played a great game. He made a lot of great plays, and he did deserve that pass rating. He played great.
Yeah, no, I do think they're relevant numbers. I think, look, more data is always better, right? Always, always, always. I sometimes try to, you don't want to dumb it down. You don't want to dumb it down. I've just always kind of fall back on the, you don't hear people debating passer rating when they're talking about what they saw on Sunday. But during the week, yes, it is absolutely a relevant number. And it does point out the fact that Jalen Hurts, when the Eagles really had to win by throwing the football last week, had a great game. People say you can't throw the ball downfield. Well, maybe you can. So that's that. Let's get to the Monday night game, because this one maybe doesn't have the same juice it did when you looked at it at the schedule a couple of weeks ago, or on the schedule. So it's Washington at 3-4 on the road at Kansas City at 4-3. So it's only one Monday night game this week: the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, and Laura Rutledge game. And Jaden Daniels isn't going to play. It's official. Dan Quinn said it today. Marcus Mariota is going to start. It'll be his third start of the year, so that actually is part of the story of the Commanders' season. He's 1-1. Vegas and Atlanta, he split against two of his former teams. The Chiefs' defense basically, and you have to consider this, got a bye last week because the Raiders ran only 30 plays. It's not unfair to say, look, they still had to tackle. They still had to be out there for 30 plays, and a lot of the guys who play defense also play special teams, but they kind of got a bye week. And I think Patrick Mahomes is going to win the MVP. I'm going to say it right now. He's already won it twice. I think he's looking at his third MVP. And I think this is going to be another statement game for Patrick Mahomes. Dorrance Armstrong is out. He's by far the best pass rusher right now for the Commanders, and he's out for the season. Listen to what Mahomes has done. And I'm going to go to passer rating, guys, in his last 3 games. Or actually 3 of his last 4. He's got a passer rating above 120. That's, even I know, that's really, really, really good. He is the first player in NFL history with 1,800 yards passing, 200 yards rushing, and fewer than 4 giveaways through 7 games. He leads the league in scrambling yards as a quarterback. He is having that kind of season. And against a banged-up Washington defense, Jori, I think this continues on Monday night. And I don't know that this game is close.
Yeah, I think that you could say, what is Mahomes going to do against a banged-up Washington defense, who, by the way, lost their best pass rusher in Dorrance Armstrong last week for the season. And you can also say, what is the Commanders' offense going to do without its quarterback, and not 1, not 2, but 3, as I said the other day, receivers? I mean, 3 receivers out is really hard to come back from. And the Chiefs are allowing just 17.7 points per game, third fewest, the 5th fewest yards. The Commanders don't have an offense, especially with Marcus Mariota, that's going to be able to overcome that. Will Marcus Mariota make some plays with his legs? Sure. But I don't think that they've got the complement of weapons to realistically compete with the Chiefs defense that actually has been consistent and an issue even before their offense figured it out this season.
Yeah, I think last week was the first time we kind of thought of watching these Chiefs teams the last few years. Some of the games you just say, how is the defense ever going to stop that offense? And the Raiders game, they really didn't. But just watching that game, it just seemed like they could do whatever they wanted. And certainly with Rashee Rice back, it's a completely different offense. But they just seem much more focused now, because I think they don't have that margin for error, right? If they want to obviously make the playoffs, they still have a fight to win the division. They have a lot of important games left, and the number 1 seed is potentially available. And remember, before the season, we thought this was going to be maybe a 3 or 4 team race with the Bengals in there with Joe Burrow, the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. They might make the playoffs theoretically. They're not getting the number 1 seed. So it's all of a sudden wide open. And even though the Chiefs have stumbled and had injuries with Xavier Worthy early on and other players, they now are very much in the thick of it. Even losing some games like you wouldn't think they'd lose to Jacksonville, and Mahomes throwing a 99-yard interception pick 6, they've still overcome that, and they're right there. They are the Super Bowl favorites. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite to win MVP. We're kind of where we thought we would be maybe in week 7. It's just been a weird road to get there. in terms of this game from a betting perspective, it's all about the line movement, right? This game, sportsbooks put out lines back in May when the schedule's released. This was Chiefs minus 3.5. So that's, again, assuming both healthy teams, expectations, Jaden Daniels in there. It was Chiefs minus 5.5 on kind of the look-ahead lines. That was when we thought Jaden Daniels was healthy. It reopened on Sunday, Chiefs minus 11.5, and now we're up to Chiefs minus 12.5, and the public is still on the Chiefs. Obviously, seeing what happened last week, where I think they were about 11.5, 12-point favorite against the Raiders, and obviously covered that with ease. So double-digit favorites this season, 7-0. 7-0 straight up. They have not lost a game, but only 4-3 against the spread. So teams that have been favored by that much have won every single game. So comfortable in your money line parlays, but haven't necessarily covered. I think this is another one, as you guys pointed out, where the Chiefs on national television, Patrick Mahomes getting a little revenge for people preseason talking about who's the best quarterback in the league. Is it Josh Allen? Is it someone else? I think this is a game they probably run away with as well.
I think they might run away with it, but I will say I don't think it's going to be like 31-0 level like the Raiders. I do think that the Commanders have more to offer than that Raiders team, and I think that they've had different pieces throughout the season, and so it'll be interesting. I'll also be curious to see what Cliff Kingsbury draws up, and obviously Cliff Kingsbury and Patrick Mahomes work together back in the day. I know they're not directly competing against each other, but both in terms of the type of creativity that Cliff will show against the Chiefs defense and perhaps anything he can do to help his defensive staff colleagues, I think will be interesting to see and make this a little bit more interesting, because sometimes, those Thursday games, those Monday games, you just never know what's going to happen. So I'm not saying I think the Commanders will win, but in terms of keeping it interesting, it wouldn't surprise me, just like we saw with the Bears and Commanders on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. In retrospect, when I was like in the WhatsApp last night throwing around, hey guys, what do you think of this game and that game and this game? And I mentioned Carolina Buffalo. Now that I really dive deeper into the Monday night game, we should have done Carolina Buffalo. It's Mahomes. It's Monday night. Like, I don't regret it, but I think Carolina Buffalo is really interesting. Buffalo can't stop the run. Carolina's going to run the football. Carolina moving up in weight class. Buffalo coming off a bye. The Bills have won 10 consecutive games coming off a bye. That's a real number. 10 like their last 10 off a bye. So just file that one away as well. That's one of the 7 early games. I still think the Bills win, but Carolina's feisty.
Well, since we're just getting in things that we wish we talked about, I also would like to note that I meant to say that the Cowboys have not beat the Denver Broncos the last 7 times, and the last time the Cowboys beat the Broncos was in 1995. I was 1 year old.
Okay, while you're on the topic of that, I'm not trying to one-up you. I'm not that. Oh, yeah, I got one too. But it goes back to the Monday night game. Here, check this out. Kansas City is 10-1 all-time against Washington, whatever the franchise has been called. 10-1. And the only win for Washington was 1983 when Joe Theismann was quarterback. Now, these are not two teams that play all the time. Obviously, they've only played 11 times. But Joe Theismann, that was the last quarterback to wear a Washington uniform. And they played at RFK before this dump. It was the old dump. Anyway, I thought Jori was going to reveal the bar where everyone was talking about passer rating, but I guess that was a different stat. Let's all hang there.
Can't tell you all Thursday my secrets in one show, guys. Tune back in for future episodes of Inside Coverage to hear.
Yes. Coming up next, what was said at the bar at the fall meeting in New York? Jori has tales from the fall meeting, actually real football stuff, specifically about the tush push and officiating and maybe even AI. This show is not powered by AI, but maybe it should be. It's Inside Coverage. Stick around. On Inside Coverage, we always remind you that this is the how and the why of everything you need to know in the National Football League. Hi, I'm Andrew. Ben Fawkes, our betting analyst, is here, and Jori Epstein, our senior NFL reporter, is here. And Jori is back from the fall meeting with the how and the why, with a million things going on. So let's empty the notebook on specifically, because I know Ben cares so much about this, the tush push here. Jori, it's the one thing that certainly moves the needle. They voted last year when we were all down in Florida, and they fell just short to ban it by 2 votes, if memory serves. Do we think there's going to be another vote on this?
I absolutely think there's going to be another vote. I've talked to multiple people in the league who view it as trending that way. And Cowboys team owner and general manager Jerry Jones told me that he does believe there will probably be a vote, not just sometime, but this spring in particular. He said that there's probably just too much criticism to avoid that. And I think to me, what was the most interesting takeaway from this league meeting is not just, oh, people still have questions about the tush push. We knew the tush push was not particularly popular. 22 of 32 teams voted this past May to ban the play, and particularly to ban the pushing and pulling of the ball carrier. The question was, could you get to that 24 out of 32, 2/3 majority that you needed to ban it? And the reason I think the answer is now going to be yes in 2026 is because the league, and really the Green Bay Packers, who officially presented the proposal this past year, had a bit of mixed messaging going on. It was, well, it's a health and safety concern because even though we haven't seen many serious injuries yet, if there were a serious injury, here's the impact it could have on the neck. And, it's not a football play, and there's the lacrosse element, and there's the officiating element, but it was kind of a mixed message. And particularly the health and safety stake that they tried to kind of plant their hill on, they really did not have a strong argument that was compelling enough teams. Now, totally different messaging. The messaging is, this is too difficult to officiate fairly in real time. And because of that, we need to consider whether it's in the game. So you had Troy Vincent, their executive vice president, telling us this is difficult to officiate in real time. I had multiple NFC executives. And again, I had an executive who told me, he goes, the league got what it deserved when it tried to make this about health and safety. If they had just said, we can't officiate the play would not be in the game anymore. Yeah. So I think that you can say that's sorry for the Eagles that they figure out how to do something. There are also many people around the league who think that Jalen Hurts will still be great at a quarterback sneak, whether or not he's got someone pushing him, because have you seen how much that guy can squat? I think we have. It's not only the offensive lineman that's going on here, but I think to me it was pretty striking that they are coalescing around a specific narrative. That narrative is officiating can't do it. We know how much the teams are always frustrated about the lack of consistent and fair officiating in their perspectives. And I think that is going to get us over the hill of 24 out of 32 banning it.
Yeah, and again, you need the 3/4 vote. So you need, as Jori said, 24 out of 32, 75% to get it done. They were 22 out of 32 last time down in Florida. So, Ben, the line for the Eagles, and I'm not trying to suggest here. Let me preface this. I'm not saying the Eagles just won a championship only because of the tush push. That is not the case, all right? So Eagles fans, don't come at me. But Ben, what's the line this week, Giants and Eagles?
I think it's a great question, and one I actually look forward to asking some odds makers. As we just discussed it, I think it would be hard to believe it wouldn't be at least half a point lower.
So it's going to move. So you would say, so here's the question. If the tush push were banned tomorrow, would that line be different?
I think so. And that's because you have I think there's a couple things on this, right? One, this isn't no shade towards them. The Carolina Panthers doing this in a 8-9 season, right? This play helped determine what team won the Super Bowl and potentially could this season. So that's also why it's in the crosshairs, number one. Number two, I think it's because of that officiating, and teams are frustrated with that, and they can't also do it as well as the Eagles can. And I think the Eagles are frustrated because they feel like people are giving too much credit towards the tush push and not the rest of their team, which is really good, and also why they're winning games. But ultimately, you have essentially an unstoppable play on 3rd down and 2, let's say, 4th down and 1. We saw a couple weeks ago, the Eagles ran this 4 straight plays, right, around the goal line. The Vikings last week had a 2nd and 1 and I forget what it turned into. Well, it wasn't a 1st down. There was no tush push. So if other teams were able to utilize this as well, it's just such an important play for the Eagles, such a unique play. I do think they would still be one of the elite teams in the NFL, but there's no question you'd have to downgrade them some because of if this play wasn't available to them on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, or if there was, let's say, some limit instituted, you can only use it X amount of times per game.
Yeah, and on that note of whether the line would change, I think it's worth noting that Stephen Jones, who's on the competition committee, did tell me we will not be looking at this during the season. This would be something we re-examine in the spring. But the competition committee is going to be interesting here because last year the Packers introduced it, and it was President Mark Murphy who was on his way out. He has since retired. And there was a not so quiet rumor around the league, or a lot of speculation, that Roger Goodell wanted this play out of the game. Everyone knew he wanted it out of the game. He didn't think it would be compelling telling if he introduced it or had the league introduce it. So, hey, Packers, can you do this? Mark Murphy does him a favor on his way out. Well, you can't have Mark Murphy do that anymore because he no longer represents the Green Bay Packers. But the competition committee does feel this way. Stephen Jones was against banning the play. Sean McVay did not think that the play necessarily could be officiated correctly. I mean, the members of the competition committee had enough support that the committee did recommend banning it, even though they didn't propose it. And so I do think that we can have, there will be someone to endorse this bill.
Jori, we only have a couple of minutes here remaining. Let's say 3 minutes remaining. I found it interesting. I think a lot of people did. When Troy Vincent, again, EVP, former defensive player, like a great corner. So, I mean, he's got on-field knowledge here, clearly. He said that with flags up this year, like 10, 12, 13%, that the league may have to step back and say, like, what is our tolerance for the number of flags? And really, I think, more narrowly, for certain penalties, whether it's illegal contact or holding or this or that. What'd you make of those comments?
I want you to know that Troy Vincent was not asked a question about this. At the end of the press conference that he was a part of, Brian McCarthy, the league's PR guy, said, Troy has one more thing he wants to say. And he's like, I just want you guys to know we spent a lot of time on this today. We had a conversation about penalty tolerance because I told the clubs and we told them, you need to be considering what is your tolerance for, as you mentioned, holding, illegal contact, legal formation, some of these different penalties, because everyone's saying it's too many penalties. It's also too little penalties. And the reality is, all of this stuff is subjective to a degree, and there are penalties on every single play in football. Nobody wants to call penalties on every single play in football. And so I think given all of the criticism and frustration, the league wants teams to say, hey, here are top 3 priorities of things we really don't want you to miss. And here are things that, you know what, if you miss taunting, we're not so concerned about it. Because teams are right now scouting and telling their players, hey, this officiating crew is going to be harder on taunting. Make sure you don't do it. Like, that is something that we think about or teams think about when they are preparing for games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't remember which crew had our game in London, but I thought there was our game. I'm sorry, I do Browns games on Sunday, so let me rephrase my phrasing there. That's redundant. The game that was played at Tottenham week 5 in London, but that crew did not call a blatant taunting on a big name player. We're like, well, that was taunting last week. And, you know, along those lines, teams, like you said, Jori, do scout what crews do. This week, for the Patriots and the Browns and the Patriots, you go road team first here, Andrew. It's Alex Moore, who is in his first year as an official, as a lead referee. He's been an umpire for about 3-4 years. His crew right now is calling the most penalties in the NFL, and it's not really close. So, something to keep an eye on, something that I guarantee you both teams are fully aware of ahead of that one. Again, one of your 7 exciting games coming up week 8 at 1 p.m. Eastern time. All right, Jori, Ben, that was fun. Have a great weekend, both of you. Have a great weekend in Pittsburgh. Ben, are you going to be on the couch? What are you doing?
I'll be here watching all the games.
Bam. Sometimes I look forward to a bye next week where I, too, will be on the couch. Or maybe I'll go to Rams Saints. First world problems, or as my grandmother used to say, busman's holiday. What the heck does that mean? I don't know, but my grandmother used to say it, meaning on your day off actually going to work. There's a bug in front of me. All right, so for Jori and Ben and Andrew, I'm Andrew, and then the bug. Thanks for listening to and watching Inside Coverage. So long, everybody.